Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase and pricing details of this watch. So today we're discussing a model launched in 2024 and made in 250 pieces in red gold from Breitling. This is the Navitimer B12 Cosmonaute 41 limited edition in honor of American astronaut Scott Carpenter. More on that in a moment. The Cosmonaute, originally reference 809 in the Breitling catalog, was created at the behest of Carpenter as a 24-hour dial variant of the Navitimer. So you could see as I adjust here, we have an hour hand that moves around the dial only one time per 24 hours. And so every time that hour hand passes 24, the date is going to jump. And this makes a lot more sense when you are a military officer in an astronaut's capacity dealing with the time on Earth or beyond. So the watch is 41 millimeters in diameter, 13.8 millimeters thick, nice and short, 46.7 across the wrist with a 22 millimeter spacing in between the lugs. The watch wears nicely on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference. George Kern of Breitling, who came on board in 2017 as its post-Schneider CEO, they really have kept their promise under Kern of making lugs smaller and watches more wearable. There's still super chronomats out there and big watches for big wrists, but I can finally wear something like this, whereas maybe in the 2010s and 2000s, a typical Breitling this size would be too big for me because of the lugs. Not a problem here. I think you could wear this watch on a wrist my size or larger, so 16 centimeters circumference and up. It's not thin, but it's also not thick, and you shouldn't have any issue with a jacket cuff. Strap is upscale. As you can see, black, semi-gloss, large rectangular symmetrical scales. Those qualities, when you combine them all, tend to indicate a fairly expensive cut of the alligator hide, and Breitling straps are always quite substantial, feeling perhaps a price class higher than they really are. It feels like something you might find on a Patek Philippe. We've got a contrasting stitch to give it a little bit of an aviator's vibe. Aviator straps traditionally calfskin, but we're going with alligator here and a contrasting stitch, so still some aviation nods, but this is a high luxury watch as a limited edition in gold. Calfskin on the bottom, you can see Breitling factory strap, brand new, no crimping, no gouging. We've got a folding clasp here with polish and satin brushing, twin trigger release so it can't pop open inadvertently, giving you security against dropping your watch while donning or removing at bedside. That's what a deployant clasp does. The case is strong and simple, as most vintage-inspired and true vintage watches do. We have a very narrow case band. The lugs are fairly squared off, although they do have a very simple expanding bevel. And then the bezel features a combination of media-blasted recesses, and then the outer faces are all polished. We have pump-style pushers that are brushed on their barrels and then polished on their faces, Breitling B logo. We have a bubble-like sapphire, and it is a sapphire, but it's designed to evoke a vintage plexiglass, as Scott Carpenter might have known back in his day. A little note about Scott Carpenter. Of course, he was a U.S. military officer and an astronaut, famous for May 24th, 1962, the flight 3 orbits around the Earth on Mercury Atlas 7, which was, I believe, call sign Aurora 7. It was part of the Mercury program. Mercury was 1 astronaut. Gemini, get it, the twins, was 2 astronauts. And then Apollo after that would have been the 3 astronauts, probably the best known U.S. space travel. But these single crewed capsules were the pioneers that got the U.S. space program started. And because he had specifically requested a Navitimer with a 24-hour dial, though the watch is described as a cosmonaut, it was actually created at the behest of an astronaut. So, of course, cosmonaut being the more universal word for people who fly in space, hence the application to an astronaut-inspired watch. The dial is green. It may not be super evident on the camera, so I just want to make that clear. It's a dark green, and it is a sort of metallic gloss. It has a distinct sunburst pattern radiating out from the center, and then a very subtle tone-on-tone with black registers that are slightly dished. We have the rose gold hands, and then the wings. Of course, the original Navitimer, created in the 1950s, was sold through the AOPA catalog, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. And so originally these wings would have had the AOPA initials on the little stripe at the center of the shield. Today, Breitling nods to the history, but not the AOPA branding for obvious reasons. The watch does have a circular slide rule calculator, which can be used to calculate various types of multiplication and division. It's really the best way to use it. Of course, if you're familiar with a slide rule, you realize that there are other scales on a true slide rule that are not present here. So let's just demonstrate real quick how you would use this. Let's say you want to divide 8 by 4. You set it up like a fraction, and you put the 8 over the 4. You got to keep your decimals in mind. This could be 80 divided by 40. It could be 80 divided by 4. And then you go to the index, and of course we're just going to say 8 divided by 4 is 2. So you see how that's right on top of the little red index there? Now let's say I want to conduct multiplication. Say I want to multiply 15 by 3. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 15 over the index now. Of course, 15 times 3 is 45. But remember, you got to keep the decimals in mind. So this is used for calculating ground speed, airspeed, fuel burn, rate of climb, rate of descent, drift, all sorts of different things. But you have to calculate rates quite frequently in an aircraft and a spacecraft, and so this allows you to do so. They still teach military aviators to use circular slide rules, by the way, so this is quite relevant even to today's military aviation. Now, we do have a hacking seconds function, so we can stop the watch, including the chronograph. We also have a quick set mechanism, so we can rapidly cycle the date down at the bottom. You'll note that we've got a little bit of a photina treatment going on here, but only on the numerals and the indices. It's not actually applied to the hands. I just look at it as a complementary color. It's actually warm and handsome and pairs well with the rose gold. So as a nostalgic touch, I'm not sure how I feel. As a complementary color, I feel it fits this watch quite well. You can see these little concentric patterns or azurage in each of the sub-registers. And then we turn it all over, and we have the B12, or we have what is effectively a version of the Breitling B01 chronograph that has a 24-hour hand instead of a 12-hour hand. So we've got a column wheel function selector, and it is one of the best in the business at any price, this B01 family column wheel. And then we've got the vertical clutch, which allows you to engage the seconds hand without any jump or stagger. We've got 47 pivot jewels, a 5-position adjustment, a COSC Swiss chronometer certification, a 4 Hertz beat rate, an automatic winding 70-hour power reserve. And you can see a unique hybrid regulator as Breitling uses Edachron for beat error and fine adjustment. And then there's a little eccentric screw, and this is the part that's sort of Breitling specific, that's used for very fine timing adjustment. Flat hairspring. And then you can see KIF shock protection is employed. And even though the B01 movement family, this is the B12, of course, but it's based on the B01, even though it wasn't designed for display casebacks when it came out in 2009, I have to say that it is fared well in Breitling's newfound display caseback era, primarily because it's fairly large and it looks good. All this is 30 meters water resistant, so you don't necessarily want to take this swimming, but splash and perhaps the rinsing of the hands, rain, you're safe. You can see right there, first Swiss wristwatch in space, and they will not let you forget that. And when? May 24th, 1962, Mercury Atlas 7. It's a very cool piece of history, and it is the first Swiss wristwatch in space. Take that, Omega. If you love this watch, reach out to Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase and pricing details. Ah, yes, I realize now I forgot to do a Lume shot, so let's enjoy that 24-hour-a-day Breitling Cosmonaute Lume.